Hey, everybody. Good evening. Hope you're doing well. And welcome to the live stream tonight. Thank you so much for being here. We'll get started in just a minute. But really appreciate everybody's kindness and so many live streams that I've seen so many people show up for and jump into and watch after the fact. So anyone that's jumping in today, we appreciate you being here. Anyone that is watching the live stream replay, appreciate you watching later. Every little bit is an encouragement to our community and to me to be able to keep doing this. And so I appreciate you all so very much. And this is going to be, in a few minutes, a place where we have people jump in if they want to jump on camera for a few minutes. And if it works out for you to jump in, feel free. We'll do it where someone jumps in for 5-7 minutes max and then jumps out, and then the next person can jump in and share some thoughts as well. But I'll share that link in about 5-7 minutes when I do a few introductory comments. But before I get started, I wanted to say also a couple things. I'm trying very hard to stay at this. I think this is worthwhile. I think that what I'm doing here is a worthy cause, and I think it's important. I think people are being helped, and I think there's going to be a lot more help soon in terms of the just the things that this channel is going to be doing. I'm trying my best to both be creative, to show up big, to show up all the time, pretty much as I can. And I'm trying really hard to meet people where they're at and to also provide something that other channels maybe aren't, at least in the same way. And as well as not just information and insights, but a platform for people to come on and respond to that, share their hearts about these topics, and hopefully provide a place where, in addition to everything else you're doing and all the other content creators, that this is a place of significant healing. But I am on the fence about whether I can continue. I do need significant help to do so. And if anyone is able to consider helping me, all the ways to do that are beneath this video. It would mean the world to me if you could partner with me in some way. It really would. So thank you so very much to anyone that can. And in terms of getting started today, context, again, before we jump in, I'm doing a whole bunch of interviews. If anyone wants to do an interview, and I'm talking to the people who have truly escaped Christianity, who by and large would fit into a category where they would say that they're agnostic or atheist, and who can say truly Christianity is both mythology and irrelevant to our lives. That those are the people that I'm mostly going after. You will see some interviews with people that don't fit in that category. Even in this next week, there's 2 of them that don't fit in that category, at least 2. But at the same time, the bread and butter of this channel is the people who have fully escaped and would say Christianity is completely in the rearview mirror of their lives, and they are free indeed, and free and ready to embrace their identity for the first time and heal from the religious trauma that's so prevalent from Christianity. So with that in mind, feel free to reach out to me if that's an option for you. In terms of the best way, I prefer Facebook because I can put a face to a name and kind of get a feeling for who I'm going to talk to in the interview. It's hard to just jump in, especially now that I'm doing them as live streams pretty much. It's hard to jump into a live stream having never met anybody, having never met the person, not knowing anything about them, but it helps if I can see who they are through, Facebook pictures and things like that. So feel free to add me on Facebook and then reach out there on Messenger and let me know that you're ready to do an interview. If we've already talked and I've dropped the ball, my apologies. Just bring it back. Remind me, hey, Tim, I'm still up for it, and we will get you on the calendar. I'm doing a lot in the month of April. I am aiming for, like, when you look at the entire month, I'm looking for an average, hopefully, of about 3 to 4 videos per day. That's my goal. Doesn't mean every day there'll be that many, but the average. And so we'll aim high and aim higher than that, but hopefully get to that average. And it's not just an issue of shooting for specific goals or trying to make the channel grow. It's that I really do want to make a big difference. And I feel like this channel, I'm in a spot where if this is going to be my primary thing, then it's going to be my primary thing. Like, people don't, if you want something like this to really be successful, you don't do it halfway. And I had to back off for a few months, even arguably even parts of the last year or two because of personal things. But I'm at the spot right now where I can, for a season, I can just give almost everything to it. And on the days when my kids are not with me, that's what I'm going to do. And the days when my kids are with me, I'm going to still do it at times when they're, busy or asleep, like now. But I want to, and on the times when I'm all alone, I want to be so available and doing so much that it just is truly, truly blowing just the socks off of what we've done so far. I want to go far beyond where we've been before. So anyway, I am going to read a few quick comments here, and then I'm going to give an intro, and then I'll share the link for anyone that wants to jump in today. And hopefully there's at least a few people. Steady Eddie says, all the best, folks. Thanks, Steady Eddie. Appreciate that. And Ducks Y, I had pretty serious mental health problems in and after college. Well, if that's related to, your escape from Christianity, I'm especially so very sorry in light of our topic today. And I hope that you've been finding some healing and the right therapist and so forth that can help. But my heart goes out for that. I know a lot of people are struggling. If that's Bible college, I can definitely relate and understand. Hey, Shell, great to see you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you being in this community so much. I don't know how much it had to do with hymnals as much as having brain damage or being seriously delusional regarding my self-belief and goals and interpretation of reality. Yeah, absolutely. That's what it comes from. Janine, good to see you again. Hi, Tim. I consider myself a secular humanist, a little of an animist because I love nature. But yeah, I'm agnostic, science-based for sure. That's awesome. Can't join today, but here to listen and support the community. I appreciate that so very much. So very much. And Janine, by the way, joined us yesterday briefly on the video and shared the link for her interview with me, which she did several years ago, but it was awesome. Loved it. I still think about it. And just good stuff. But I'll be in touch with Janine too. We'll figure out a way and a time to get you back on here. But anyway, we'll touch base later. Love Dr. Pepper, geography and motors. Okay, I like that handle. I'm a theist or a hopeful theist, but I absolutely agree. Christianity is toxic and irrelevant to our life. I would far rather us all be atheists, agnostics, apatheists. How do I say that? Apatheists? Or even misotheists than God-fearing religious people. Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, I'm going to share the link in just a minute, but I just want to share a few quick thoughts here as we get started. The topic tonight is dealing with depression after deconversion. And I probably, for the sake of, you have to come up with short YouTube titles or people won't read them. That's just a rule, the shorter, almost the better. If you can do it in 3 or 4 words, that's much better than 7 or 8, even though 7 or 8 are going to be more clarifying and elucidating. You need it short, especially for the thumbnail. But it really could be dealing with depression during and after deconversion and through it and all the above, just all the ways that this has affected your life. There's depression. And I think a lot of us struggle with that for a lot of reasons, not with depression, but the idea of having depression, because we want to say that we have so much peace as a result of leaving, and we do, but we also want to be able to make sure that we don't give the Christians fodder to say, see, you left Christ and now you're depressed. What did you think was going to happen? That's the kind of, gaslighting that they love to give to you. But there are different reasons that people go through depression, and it's very normal. It's very natural. I'm not saying it's healthy, but I'm saying it's normal. It's natural. Leaving Christianity is losing your heavenly Father. It's losing the afterlife. It's an incredible loss. If you can just shrug it off like it didn't mean anything, then maybe it really didn't mean anything to you. You should not be able to shrug off a God that's truly like your Father and the love of your life, the lover of your soul, your best friend, your Savior. You shouldn't be able to just say, oh, well, I guess he's not real. I guess, time to move on. If it was your everything, then you lost everything. And that hurts. It hurts a lot. So we're going to talk about that tonight. I think a lot of us want to be honest with ourselves about it, but we also struggle in general in this society to be honest about mental health issues with, real honesty, including depression. I think depression, I'm just going to read a few notes here I put down. Depression is disorienting for us. Because it's really multiple losses. You're losing the God character, but you're also losing your community. You're losing your own identity, all this stuff, and a lot more. Leaving was very brave. It took a lot of strength. But sometimes when you're sort of in a battle for a long time, and this is a battle to figure out what do I believe and what's true, what's not, when you're in a battle for a long time, it's going to wear you down, and that wearing you down is going to be depressing because you're just tired. I mean, you know what it's like when you miss sleep. I've missed a ton of sleep in the last week. When I was live streaming, I think Monday, I literally had 1 hour of sleep in the last 48 hours before that because of my kids waking me up and issues. And there was nothing I could do. You have to wake up as a parent and take care of your kids. And so I jumped on here at 8 o'clock at night with 1 hour of sleep for the last 48 hours before then. I had a little boy who woke me up this morning at 3 o'clock. And that was it. Like, that was my night, was, 3 o'clock's it. That's all the sleep you get. But you know what it's like if you were to do that forever, where week after week after week after week, you never catch up. Eventually it wears you down and you do get sad or sick or something. Leaving was brave and it took so much out of you. Leaving saved your mind, but it also wore your mind down. And you lost your worldview, you lost your community, you lost your belonging, all that stuff that we talk about. You lost the future that you thought you had, the sense that God was there and protecting you and had a story for your life. So many things. You lost it all. And then you're expected to just keep going, keep moving forward. Wake up, pay the bills, go to work, do your thing, smile for everybody, function well, perform with stability. And you just feel like you're collapsing inside. You need time to figure out what happened and to recover. And depression is going to give you the fog, again, the tiredness, the fatigue, the grief, the numbness. There's the inner conflict that's going on. There's a rage that sometimes is very deep that's inside, a loneliness, the ache of realizing how much of your old life, your inner life, was built around all these toxic ideas, fear, guilt, and just craziness that you lived your whole life, and they stole that from you, and you're aching for your life back. And when you deconstruct, the silence and the depression that can come, doesn't always come, but that can come, is just brutal to some people. And I think we need to be honest about that. It's not an embarrassment thing to be honest about this and say, it hurt and I cried and I didn't stop crying for a long time. You danced to the music of God for 30 years and then the music stopped. It's going to feel weird. It's going to feel really weird. And when we leave Christianity, we have, in many ways, how should I put this? There's a lot of pain that builds up during your time in Christianity that never gets a chance to come to the front. It's like you have things to grieve and pain to face, not about deconstruction, but just about all your time in Christianity. And when you finally deconstruct, it might be years worth of grief that you have repressed that just floods to the surface because it's never had a chance to before. When you were a Christian, all that stuff that you went through in terms of the theology, the worm theology, you're a bad person, you're a sinner, don't trust your mind, override yourself all the time, surrender more, all these things and so much more that told you you're broken and you're bad and you just need Christ and the gospel. It led your psychology to be utterly exhausted. I mean, the bullshit that they give you is so exhausting and it tears you down. And it's like there's a secret voice inside of you just screaming inside saying, can I please have my humanness back? For Christ's sake, let me be a human. And when you repress that for years and then all of a sudden the floodgates open, you feel at the same time like you want to finally let this stuff out, but at the same time, it's so much you just want to collapse, and that collapse is incredibly painful for a lot of people. And your body hurts. Your body takes it seriously, of course. And so we want to create tonight a space for people to say, yeah, that's true. It did hurt. And let me tell you a little bit about why it hurt and how I'm doing and how I'm getting through it and what moves me forward in this or keeps me moving forward. One foot in front of the other. There's nothing weak about being depressed. I hope you all know that. I hope you all tell yourselves that on the deepest level. There's nothing weak or embarrassing about saying, I am really sad about what happened. I lost a lot. And some of you, the losses don't stop there. You lost your family, your church, the respect. It just goes on and goes on and goes on. It never ends. There's nothing shameful about grieving a life that you gave your heart to and your mind to and your time to, and that old life in the long run ended up betraying you and wounding you so badly. And there's something deeply human and sane about your body and your mind and your psychology and all this stuff, your memories coming together and say, I just couldn't keep carrying that old way of life. And I am done with Christianity, but in some ways, Christianity isn't done with me. It screwed me over for years, and it still is trying to screw me over by this depression. How do you get through it? So that's my sort of thought for what we could do tonight. We'll attack this topic in different ways on different other live streams, but I'm going to share the link here if anyone wants to join the StreamYard link. But based on who does and doesn't come in, I've got a lot to talk through. And if we end up having just a lot of people jump in throughout this, then I'll just save my thoughts for another day. We'll do a part 2 or part 3, etc. While we wait for anyone to come in to the studio, and if anyone's jumping in, there's just a couple clicks. It's not too complicated, but I think one of the words that came to my mind as I was thinking about this was an avalanche. I'm not really a skier, but I've seen enough videos to know that must terrify people to see that coming toward you. But I think escaping Christianity is a trigger of an avalanche. It is the loud noise or the crack in the ice and the snow that suddenly causes everything to just fall and collapse. You sort of expect, and in some ways get, a whole bunch of positivity when you leave Christianity. And I admit, I felt super happy at first. I was like, I have so much peace, and this makes so much sense of my life so far. It feels like sunlight's just pouring through the windows. But at the same time, you also acknowledge this is a funeral of sorts. I mean, you are having a funeral for your Heavenly Father. When I deconverted, I deconverted fully at the end of September of 2019. And in January of that same year, I had a funeral. My dad did die that year. And, how obnoxious would it be for someone to come into my family's funeral, if they'd come in that year in January of 2019, to come in while we're grieving his death, and we're saying our last respects. How awful would it be for someone to come in and start being rude or saying things like, "Oh, you guys are stupid you're so stupid for having this funeral." And yet when you do a funeral for God, they're like, "You guys are stupid because he's not dead." Like, no, the doctor checked. Yahweh's quite dead. Jesus is quite dead, and they've stayed dead. And I'm doing a funeral. Can you please be respectful? And instead they just attack you, and you feel like you're all of a sudden going from living in this light and trying to appropriately grieve, and now you're in rubble. The freedom that you have that you get during deconversion is a funeral. You're grieving God, you're grieving heaven, you're grieving your certainty, you're grieving your church family, your old self, all that stuff we've been talking about recently. And you leave what wounded you, right? You leave the Christianity that wounded you, but you still have to grieve what you lost while you were inside of it. You still have to go through that process. And sometimes, your mind is just, it's mourning this cage. It's crying about this cage. And you're like, I know it's a cage and it shouldn't hurt to be done. But it's like when you're in it, pardon me, this is going to sound like a weird way to illustrate it, but imagine if you were stuck in a cage and like a psychopath had put you there. But you had been put there for so young in life or for so long, and you knew you could never get out, that you'd kind of have to force yourself to play mental games and kind of make it a home until you could escape. And so you might have decorated the bars in some way or done something to make it feel acceptable, just to keep your mind from screaming at what the horror of what you're going through. But if you're in that long enough, that's like your home. You've decorated your prison. And you finally leave the prison, you finally leave the illusion, but it still breaks your heart. And some of our exits are going to feel glorious, this is the true resurrection. And some of our exits are going to feel a lot more like a burial. And for, I think, a lot of us, it feels like both. They're just ping pong back and forth. But that's where the depression starts to creep in. I do have someone on in the studio. So if I'm reading it correct, is that Hamo? But Hamo, I want to bring you on here, and we'll get started with your thoughts tonight.
Yes, hi, Tim. I love your show. I wasn't an evangelical. I was a Muslim, and my conversion and my faith was totally different than yours. And I was depressed while I was believer, and I was so depressed I didn't want to live forever. I wanted to be annihilated. So losing my faith was kind of like a relief. But now I'm thinking, if there was like a reasonable, just God who could like punish all the evildoers and protect all the children, that would be definitely great. One thing that I find your channel so fascinating because your faith was like evangelical faith seems so unusual. Like even if I look at like ex-Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, there isn't that personal guilt and connection to God and the I don't know. It just seems like your faith took over your soul, right? I mean, they're like Mormons, for example, when they leave, they get ostracized and this, but they never say, you know, oh, I was ready to die for God. I was gonna, you know, I'll be okay if God, I don't know, made me for His purpose. You don't hear that from like Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons or any other faith. It's just amazing. How did that come to be? How did that? I don't know. I think if you came from maybe some other religion, you wouldn't be as depressed.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. Although I have seen some very sincere people of other faiths that I would imagine if they woke up and realized it wasn't real, that for some people it could be still pretty intense to go through that.
It is intense. It is intense, but not in the same way. Not in a sense of I lost my closest friend, you know, or you don't have that, like when you do something wrong, you're hurting God. That's wild to me. Like, how can you hurt God? Or there's like so much guilt, so much personal. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Like to me, God was like a benevolent king, you know, and He can hear your thoughts, but you cannot hurt Him. You know, He didn't. And He's reasonable. Like He's not. If you do something wrong, He's not gonna strike you dead. And it just wasn't so overwhelming, you know. It certainly was. I mean, it does. Like, for example, I got a bad grade, oh, because I didn't pray enough last week or something. You get those thoughts, but you never feel like you're hurting God. You never feel like, you know, He died for you. You don't feel worthless, you know. You don't feel dirty, worthless, and you're so bad, yet He's so great and He loves you, even though you're hurting Him all the time. And it just sounds like, I don't know, like an abusive spouse, you know, who's bringing you down and saying you're so lucky to have me, even though you're so fat and horrible, and look what you made me do, and things like that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Can I ask just for your story, since I don't know that I've really dove into the Muslim faith too much yet on the channel, though I'd love to. I've got no reason I haven't. But can you tell me how long were you in it, and what was it like to escape it?
I wasn't very long, maybe like 8 years. So I was born into a secular family, and I had this one uncle who was an alcoholic, and at a very young age, his liver almost failed. So he kind of became a born-again Muslim, and that saved his life. He lived a very long life. He had kids and grandkids, and he's still alive too. This was in early 90s. Yeah, and I was
That's
thinking,
good.
you know, if he knew the truth, if he knew there's no God, who knows if he would have survived. Maybe he would have, who knows. But yeah, I was told like there's like that Quran is amazing, that there's these scientific truths in it and stuff, and I always like had like a very secular thing with Islam. Is not like it's a lot like Christianity. Varies by region and culture and so on, and there are different beliefs, different traditions. Yeah, so when I came to United States and I met this one Muslim guy I kind of admired, but he did believe in evolution, and that blew my mind. Like, how can you not believe in evolution? Like, isn't it obvious? Because I believed, you know, like many Christians believe in evolution, that God guided it and so on. so once I believe that there's these like miracles in Quran and these scientific facts. Once I've read those scientific facts, I mean, it's just BS, just load of bull. But my faith was like, I know God is reasonable. Like in Islam, like if you die and you're not Muslim, you don't go to hell, because God knows your heart. He knows if you're a good person and so on. So you would go to hell if you like used to be a Muslim and you leave Islam. And I think my grandfather did that. And I was thinking, well, he's a good guy, he should go to hell. But that kind of bothered me at the time. And then you get like perverse incentives, well, if you tell somebody about Islam and they don't believe you, will they go to hell? So maybe you shouldn't tell them, You get a weird. And the other thing with Islam is like you have to pray 5 times a day. It's a lot of work, and I have ADHD, and I'm just not good at keeping schedule. And you have to like do a ritual wash before you pray, and if you like fart or go to bathroom, you have to do it again. And it's I felt constantly guilty. I wasn't praying enough, that I wasn't praying 5 times a day.
When
also, prayers are in a language I don't understand. I don't speak Arabic.
Yeah, that'd be hard. How long ago did you leave?
So this was like, I was in college. This was like late 90s, 98 maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Did it feel like that was, I know we're off track here a little bit from the topic, but just since this is the first time meeting you, I'll just get a quick gauge for your story. But did you feel like that led you to like atheism or agnosticism, or were you at that point just investigating other religions? How did you respond to that?
So at that point, so at that point, I said to first of all, I saw these so-called scientific proofs, and that really weakened my faith, but they didn't kill it. What killed it was I was studying scientific method, and they say, and there's a principle of falsifiability, meaning if there is no God, how will I know that God doesn't exist, right? And Islam and all the other religions, they cannot be falsified, So I saw that as a big problem, that my religion was just like a conspiracy theory or Bigfoot or something, no matter what somebody tells me. And this was like a huge. So what I said to myself is, okay, I'm going to put my religion on hold and I'm going to really study this. And over time, I just never went back. And then eventually I started seeing, like, for example, I was always told that Quran is like a miracle. This is the most amazing book ever written. And even years after I left, I always thought that. And then I heard somebody say that they found it dull and boring. And I was like, wait, that's kind of true. I always did find it dull and boring, but it's like a deep water fish, and you take it out of water, and then it realizes that there was this thing called water all around it, and you never, it's like, yeah. So yeah, over time, I just kind of, and then I saw like atheism on YouTube and how silly religions are, and now I'm just like, but I'm really more interested in like why people believe and what kind of faiths they have. I just find it so fascinating. I really do.
Yeah, agreed. It is fascinating. It's if we can look at it objectively for the first time, it's and I love to honestly studying the mythology, but the hard part is realizing that mythology caught my heart and my mind for 40 years, and so it's a bittersweet experience. Well,
right, and there's nothing wrong with these people that believe. Like I believe things. I believe that 3 billion miles away there's a giant planet with 13 moons. Right, it's called Neptune. Right, and I never seen it myself. But I believe it because that's what I've been told. So it's not it's believers are not dumb people. You just kind of you believe what you're told, what you're always told, and you have no choice. If I believed everything that I personally saw, I would be a flat earther or something.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, there's certainly ways in which faith comes into our lives, whether we want it to or not. But hopefully, we're still doing our best to pursue, the most true things and to avoid the most false things, and to be the kind of people that are skeptical when there's a good reason to be. But I hear you.
Absolutely,
I appreciate your.
Yeah, but if you don't, if you believe, I don't know, that Earth is 6,000 years old, I can understand that. I don't think you're unreasonable or whatever.
Well, I mean, I would have some issues with some of that based on the evidence, but at the same time, I think it's the thing I would go to is just to say I understand why people have a hard time looking objectively at the evidence when
Yeah,
they have been pre-programmed from childhood to believe that everybody else that's saying differently is from the devil or is, just that the poisoning of the well effect. And it's pretty hard to see past it. I mean, I certainly stood firmly on young earth creationism and all that stuff. I didn't get into flat earth, but young earth creationism and all that whole bandwagon, I was on that myself for 40 years. I mean, 40
yeah.
years is a long
I
time
imagine.
to not see it.
Yeah, I mean, you grew up in it, and that's perfectly understandable. Like, what if somebody realized that evolution is not true? That would like blow my mind. I don't think I could ever believe evolution isn't true, because I grew up with it as part of my worldview. Like, I also never seen DNA. I believe it exists. I never seen atoms. I believe it. You just kind of have to believe what people tell you. That's just reality of situation. And I understand people who once you like change their worldview totally, it's very hard to accept, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, there's some things I would want to say to all the things you just said, but I don't want to get us too far off track from
Okay,
the main
yeah,
point. But
sure.
I do just want to say I'm so glad to meet you. If I might be mistaken, and my apologies if to anyone that I've interviewed that was a Muslim, but in terms of just having you on the channel, it's so good to meet you. And if please do reach out if you ever feel like you want to share your whole story. You know how to find me on Facebook, Harmonic Tim. But either way, thank you for being part of our live stream. I appreciate you sharing your insights. It was really good to meet you.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Keep up a good work. I love your channel.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Okay, bye.
Have a good night. All right. Thank you again, Hemo, for joining us. Really appreciate that. And if anybody wants to join, again, I'll share a few thoughts here for a minute, and then we'll jump into whoever else comes in next. I do see some comments, so let's go to them for a second before I share anything and give anyone a chance to join if they wanted to. Let's see here. Shell says, hey, Janine, enjoyed hearing from you. Yep, absolutely, ditto. And hey, Cold Iron Gaming, great to see you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Grateful for this community. Likewise. And lost everyone from my childhood church. So many people I loved felt like they left me for dead in my darkest moments. Yeah, for sure. I'll just comment on that real quickly. I was shocked when I left that nobody came after me. You would have just thought, that the parable, the 99 sheep, but you lose one, you go after it. Jesus goes after it. I was in it for decades, and nobody came after me. No one tried to reach out. No one tried to tell me the gospel. I mean, yes, they could say, well, you already know the gospel. What can we tell you that you don't already know? You not only know it, you've preached it. You've preached it dozens and dozens of times on street corners and in churches, and that certainly is a factor. But at the same time, if you think as a Christian that there's that much at stake, that I am literally now very likely on the way to hell, meaning I probably, by their theology, was never a true Christian, that therefore I have everything to lose, and therefore you have every reason to fight for my eternal soul. And they didn't, pardon my direct language, but they didn't give a rat's ass, and they didn't give a shit about me. I got like one letter about a year later. There was just pure gaslighting. I know Jesus lives, and 500 people saw him raised from the dead, and yada yada yada. And I've felt his power for 40 years, and I know he exists. I'm like, thanks. At least I got one letter after 12 or 15 months or something. At least I can say somebody tried a little bit. But like, where's the other 1,000 Christians that I knew that didn't care at all? And I didn't leave needing more evidence to pile on to keep me out. What I had when I deconverted was enough to keep me out permanently. But I found more reasons, ample reasons in the mythology and the comparative mythology stuff, the academics, to keep thinking, yes, I made the right choice. Didn't need that, but it helped. But in terms of the social interaction, it was very, very clear. Christians do not have love in their hearts, and they do not care about your soul. They will basically say, again, pardon my language, but they'll basically say, if you were one of us and then you say it's not true and you left, fuck you. You really want hell? Go have at it. When I was a Christian, I would have fought hand and foot to show love and kindness to anybody that had left. And I might not have always had the words to say, but I would have been kind and gracious and curious. And I would have been like, hey, maybe we don't even have something to talk about, but can we just get a cup of coffee? Can I be your friend? I care about you. Nobody. Even some of the closest people in my world, they just walked away. It's very sad. Shell says, can't jump in tonight because I volunteer Thursdays, but I'm here in spirit. I definitely went through some depression, just getting stuck in a place that felt unsafe. Yeah. Janine, my greatest fear at a funeral, someone being like, but they weren't saved. Where's the respect? Yeah, that's the hard part about Christian funerals is how do you preach a Christian funeral or go to a Christian funeral knowing that you think that they're burning in hell this very moment, and someone's going to give a eulogy, or you're supposed to give a eulogy, and they were such a nice guy and they were so creative and so caring and so loving, but by the way, they're burning in hell screaming, but sucks to be them. But while they were living, they were a good guy, so let's say some nice words about them. It's so sick. It is an abusive relationship. It conditions people to believe that God is silent or punishing when you aren't doing right, so then you end up being okay with relationships with people who do that too. I used to work for a Muslim family, so this is interesting to me. It is an Abrahamic religion, so in my opinion, it is relevant to deconstruct and understand them all. Yeah, very much. Codon Gaming, I find it very interesting to see how different people have viewed religions of various types. Yeah, for sure. Hey, Dark God 6, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Anyone that wants to join the live stream, you're very welcome to. And just a few quick thoughts here while we wait to see if anyone else jumps in here shortly. I think a lot of us, when we're Christians, we don't realize how much we're in survival mode, and survival mode isn't just Christianity. I know we're focusing on that. You can be in survival mode for another 20, 30, 40, 50 reasons. But, you've got this sort of dread all the time, hell and judgment, and God's watching you, and temptation, and you're going to fail God, and it's going to not work out so well. You want to get the crown of jewels. You want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant, and you might end up messing your life up, and it'll affect everything. And you're always, always, always in these reflexes of what have I done, or how is this about to fall apart? And you never really get a chance to rest. You're in pure survival mode in Christianity. And when you leave, the adrenaline is going to drain in a sense. But when it does, you feel like you're in a fog for a while. You feel like you've got this collapse mode going on. And, you're like, I escaped. Why do I feel so much worse? Do I feel worse, or am I imagining it? Is this temporary? What is this? I escaped a prison for my mind, and I can acknowledge mentally, this is great. I won the lottery. Everyone else around me is going to spend their lives in Plato's cave, and I escaped. I get to live my life, at least some of it, for real. All my loved ones, they're never going to live a day of their lives if they don't escape this. They're going to go to their deathbeds praying to a God who's never been there. What a great thing. I won the lottery. And you do feel excited. You do feel happy, but it's like, why do I feel worse some days? And we have to acknowledge that worse that we're feeling is not necessarily new, and it's not necessarily a result of the deconversion. It may be simply the buildup that was already there. You have been waiting to let this go. You've been waiting. You've been in years of emergency mode. And we talked some about that, I think it was last night. But you've been in years of this stuff. And what the worst that you're saying you feel is it was just delayed this time. You were already there. And the sirens, in a sense, have finally stopped. But your body is like acknowledging in the silence, I am utterly exhausted from what I've been through. And, when your survival mode runs out of gasoline, you break down, your car's not going to run anymore. And that's kind of where we're at with it. And in that kind of context, you're going to see that you have, in fact, buried pain. Your worldview is very good at burying pain. It's very good at keeping you in survival mode and keeping you moving. If it has to distract you, your active brain, distract you so that you don't see all the pain that's going on, all the nonsense, it'll do it to keep you moving. It'll do it to keep you happy. It's how you survive. And your psychological pain is there right beneath the surface. And especially, we acknowledge and talk about a lot in some of these contexts that your depression is just a different form of anger. You're angry. and you're grieving, and you should be angry. You should be grieving. You have been through so much. All your pain was just, it came to the surface, it tried to, and it kept getting pushed back underground. Push it back, push it back. And it just, once you leave, it comes just flooding up through the floorboards of the house of your life. And I've talked a lot recently about how some of this is going to be healing your childhood wounds. And I do imagine, I have these word pictures that I come back to over and over, that you have to go back in a sense to look at that little child yourself. Look at that little child who, for many of us, I know not all of us, but we had different experiences, but for a lot of us, you're that little child who's going to sleep crying, terrified, lonely, feeling unseen or uncared for, scared, maybe scared of your parents, scared of God, scared of the rapture, scared of the devil, scared of disappointing everybody and sinning, whatever it is, flavor of the month, but you're chronically unsafe, thoroughly chronically unsafe. And your church, your Bible, your pastor, your parents, they were teaching you how to confess and what to confess. And all this time, your nervous system effectively was just like begging you for an understanding of what is this and what's happening. And maybe now as an adult, for the first time, your nervous system is finally getting the answers. I see now what's been happening this whole time. I see it clear as day. I see the abuse. I see the neglect. I see the just terrible lies, terrible distortion of reality. And your buried pain, it's not going to disappear. It didn't disappear. It never went away. It was just waiting in all the chaos and all the noise of Christianity. It was waiting for a moment of silence to finally speak up. And when it finally spoke up, you can start to deal with it. But it couldn't come out till now. It was just too much noise, way too much noise to be part of your healing process. It was in a sense wanting to come back. And I'm talking a lot of times as if your worldview can be personified. And I think it's a good way for me to think through it. I'm working on a presentation where I will be worldview personified and speak to you as if I am your worldview. But your worldview in many ways has been begging to talk. It's like another person. It's just like, can we please have a serious conversation? I've got so much to tell you and so much to ask you. We have a lot to talk about. This is very serious. And either you reject it, I reject it, or we can't hear them. We don't know that they're saying that. We can't say yes or no or maybe. We're oblivious. And it's like your worldview just keeps on trying to find ways to say, if you can hear me, I would really like to have a conversation with you. Because your worldview, am actually driving your life. I'm driving your experience. I'm driving your perspective. And you think your beliefs are, and they're not. I hold all the cards. I hold all the buttons. I am those crazy cartoon characters in the Disney movie Inside Out. I'm in your head. And if we don't talk, you have no idea what's really going on. And I'd like you to. I'd like you to know what's going on inside your own heart and your own mind. Let's see here. Going back to some comments here. Cold Iron Gaming. You can see how they truly think when they realize you are no longer in the club. Yeah. Yep. Your ticket to ride's over. Sunny Deification. I'm in shock how long I believed the lies and judgment. I'm 46 and feel like it's held me down and put extreme limits on me my entire life. I'm ready to rise. That's awesome. Very, very cool. If you do ever feel like you want to share your story, I mean, if you feel like it's kind of new to you, the deconstruction, it's probably not a good time to talk about it too much till you've gone further down that road. But whenever the time is right, please feel free to reach out to me on Facebook. I've just put my handle for that. Add me as a friend and send me a message there, and we'll set you up for an interview when you're ready to share it. But I do wish you well. I don't know that we've spoken before or talked at all, but I'm so sorry for what you've been through. So glad you escaped, and I really wish you peace and just so much thriving and healing through the process. Janine says, it's crazy to see they literally never truly give a shit. I always judge people individually, but I was wrong. The religion gets in there and changes them. Keep it up, Tim. Yeah, absolutely. The religion really does turn people into monsters. As we like to say on repeat, it's like a broken record here, but I think it just, you can't get away from some simple basic truths. When you believe monstrous thoughts long enough, they turn you into a monster. There's no way around it. And Christians do exactly that. Their hero is ancient Canaanite psychopathic demigod. That's who they've chosen as their hero. And he does insane psychopathic stuff. And they sit back as his believers and applaud. You believe monstrous thoughts long enough, you will turn into a monster. And thus, that's what we see on the evening news every day. Sunny deification, I will share once my anger subsides. Yeah, feel free. Yeah, if it's 6 months, a year, whatever, you take your time, don't rush it. Figure out where you want to land, and then when you feel like, if you want to share, feel free to reach out to a channel like mine. And we love hearing stories, and we can all learn from each other. And I love too how our stories become survival manuals for someone else. Someone else is going to hear your story and relate to you in a way that's just so profound, and feel like you gave him hope. Professor Unwin, Tim, tell the truth. I bet you missed Veggie Tales. Yes. Oh, yes. If you like to talk to tomatoes, if a squash can make you smile. Oh, yes. Veggie Tales. That wasn't as big I was a little bit older at that point. What was my world was more Sparky. Sparky's, of course, with Awana, and Salty the Singing Songbook. Do you all know that? I'm dating myself here, but Salty the Singing Songbook, if I've got that correctly. And then Sparky from Awana's. And there's probably one or two more things I'm missing. But, and of course, you get a little bit of Jim Dobson and Adventures in Odyssey. And I always get a kick out of that when I think about Adventures in Odyssey. Not the Focus on the Family radio program, but later when I learned that a whole bunch of the New Testament, the Gospels, the stories of Jesus and the stories in Acts with Paul, that they were based in large part on Homer's Odyssey. So what an irony. These are Adventures in Odyssey. They're adventures lifted and copied from Homer's Odyssey. Truly Adventures in Odyssey. Yeah, that's about the only thing I miss. Well, if anybody wants to join, I'm going to put the link in again, and we'll go here for a little bit longer. I think a lot of us, when we go through this stuff, we're realizing that we truly work, if you really meant it, and I think I did, you were living on a level of the cosmic. I remember towards the end of my time in Christianity using the phrase all the time, ultimate reality. Ultimate reality. And it crossed my mind, and what I was doing with that thought was, it crossed my mind that if evolution is wrong, and I certainly believed it was, that we also still as Christians sometimes lived as people who would say, yes, evolution's incorrect, but there's so much randomness in the sense of what God did. He made zebras the way he did, but he didn't have to. He just kind of rolled the dice and said, all right, we'll do black and white stripes. And he did, the rings of a tree this way, and, the way that this planet goes that way. And it all seems to me like there was still too much randomness in the mix. Like God is doing things intentionally. He's not using evolution, but he's still just like scattering paint all over the canvas. And it's still beautiful, but there doesn't seem to be a rhyme and reason for a lot of it. Why does it have to be that way? So many questions about nature and science. And I realized that as a Christian, that what I was bumping up against was this very idea of, what if it's not random? What if it looks random? You'd say, well, the bald eagle looks that way. It looks, has a white head, white fur feathers on its head because it's random. Or you could say, actually, no, nothing's random with God. God is not an evolutionary God. So therefore, there's actually a reason for that. He did that very specifically. And some things are going to be beyond our ability to figure out why he did it that way. But I took it upon myself to try to say, maybe, just maybe, we can figure out some of the big parts of what he's sort of putting all over the universe, all over nature, so that we can kind of get in his vibe. And he's not random. So what is he saying through these essentially like almost hidden messages of I created this animal this way for a reason. And, it's always all about, to me, it was always about the gospel, or about God's nature, or about his plan of salvation, or about heaven. And so I tried, and I was working on a book of worldview observations. It was about 1,000 pages long. I never got finished. I would have had to put it in a few volumes or cut it back, but it was my baby. I loved it. I had another book of prayers, and that was also, I worked on that prayer book, also over 1,000 pages. I worked on that nonstop for like the last 2 or 3 years before I started deconstructing. It was everything to me, everything to be praying more honestly and openly. And, but when you get to that point where you're thinking on these cosmic levels, like God is doing amazing things, and he's writing stories and letters, the letters are so big you can't even see it. As C.S. Lewis would say, just written across the sky, but you're part of a big story. It is cosmic, it is eternal. And then when you step out of that, and you're like, none of that was real. You made that up. You made that up in your head. You made it feel real, but that didn't make it real. It wasn't real. It was never real. You made it up. And your loss of this cosmic meaning is devastating. And Christianity gave us a script for all the important parts of life, for your purpose, for why there's suffering, for why there's seasons of waiting, for the lessons that God is teaching you, sort of the hand behind the curtain, the hand that's, the puppet master. And you stepped out of a story that narrated everything from heaven down to earth, from, through time, all through history, from history past to eternity future. And now you're in a world where it just hurts. When there's pain, it just hurts. And there's nothing else to say about it. It's just a shame, and it hurts. That's all you live in. And it's unbearably nihilistic and cold at first. And you miss that meaning. You're like, where's the meaning and the purpose in all this? And all those false comforts, I mean, they are comforting, sure, but they're false comforts. But they left, deep imprints, because they were trying to help you survive. And there's a terrible, horrible ache that can come in these scenarios where we're not missing the truth, because it wasn't the truth, but we miss maybe the anesthesia of their explanations. We miss the euphoria of just knowing that we're part of a big party and a big story. We miss the opiate. We miss the painkiller that Christianity was. When you lose the divine meaning, it's like you're just staring out at the universe, and forever you thought it's kind of staring back at you and smiling and saying, "Hey, it's going to be okay. I got you. I got the whole world in my hands." And you're just like, this is awesome. I am so small, but I'm so important because I'm a child of the King. And then you're like, sorry, but you're a speck of dust that's here for a millisecond and you're gone. That hurts. It hurts to admit that. Nihilism hurts. It absolutely shakes you to your core at first. You get used to it, and it gets a lot better. To me, it's not a big deal, but it's just reality. I'd rather know the truth of the matter, but it hurts at first. See here. Sunny Deification says, one more reply. Now that I know the truth, I feel a bit lost because my life depended on a fairy tale God. So basically, I need to find myself. Yeah. Yeah. Very well said. Very good way to put it. Yeah. You in a sense, you have been talking to yourself this whole time. And that's what's ironic, is we think we've been talking to God, but we have been talking to ourselves. And it's time to realize, not that we're God in the sense that we're, I'm God, I'm the creator, I'm some kind of powerful being, but just like, you're the God character in your own story. You are the God voice, because you have been talking to yourself. And in many ways, that I think can connect for some of us with the reality that when we say God feels like he's been loving, but also harsh to me. He's been loving to me through the gospel, but he's been harsh to me as well. And you have to eventually say, switch it and replace God with I. I have been loving to myself, but I've also been very harsh with myself. You are the God voice in your head. You've always been the God voice in your head. No one else has been there. It's just been you talking to you. Your devotions, your private time, your worship, your tears to God. It's been you begging yourself for answers and for help. And that's weird at first. It really is weird, but it gets better. See here, I prefer absurdism over nihilism. I'm not sure I would go there yet, but I hear you. I hear you. There are days. Again, you come back when you watch the evening news. I would say maybe I lean that way a little bit more. I think a lot of us go through depression too, because sort of related to what I just said, we have a very damaged view of ourselves in Christianity. We have a very damaged relationship to ourselves. Our self-talk is really nasty, and you're fallen, you're depraved, you're sinful, you're wicked, you're deceitful, desperately wicked, you're filthy, your righteousness is like a filthy rag. You're core to the core from the day you were born. You're a child of Adam and Eve, and that's your mental muscle memory. That's the tone. I mean, that's what's hard about this is you're asking yourself what has been the content of my inner voice and what has been the tone of my inner voice. And even if the content of your inner voice may have been somewhat okay, your tone to yourself may have been quite nasty. And that tone you may have said, that's not me. That this whole time it's been God having a harsh tone toward me, or at least I perceived he had a harsh tone toward me. And then when you realize it's just been you talking to yourself, you realize I've had a harsh tone toward myself. And you and I can escape the worldview. We can escape the theology, the belief system of Christianity and say, I know it's mythology. But it had a verdict that you lived by and stood by and felt, oppressing you for years. You're wicked and you need salvation. And that verdict dominated everything. It's not gone yet just because you can say with your mouth, Christianity is mythology and it's irrelevant. That verdict of you're bad is still there. You have a very damaged relationship with yourself, as do I. Depression feeds on you alienating yourself. It just feeds on it and grows so bad. It thrives where someone, in a sense, has been effectively trained to believe that, or trained to feel like they are a problem to be solved all the time. If we can just fix you and, you're still like a broken pot, we can just super glue all these little things together and maybe you'll be okay. Maybe you'll be salvageable somehow. And instead you're not seen as a life to be tended and celebrated and just rejoiced over. You're just a problem to be solved. And some of us can escape Christianity, but Christianity still resides. It still lives in the way that we look at ourselves. It really does. Any religion, Christianity included, any religion that teaches you and me to just trust ourselves to that core level, it is not going to leave quietly. It is not going to just say, okay, well, you don't believe me. Okay, I'll move on to the next victim. Like it's going to hang on. There's going to be a residue and it's going to try to stick. It's Velcro. That's where the depression starts. It's got a hold. It's got its talons in you. Professor Yeoman says, well, it takes time to rewire the synapses. Yeah, exactly. And it takes even more time if we think that we don't even have a way to see that. If we can't see those synapses, we can't identify what's going on. It feels like we can't even start that process. So again, I'm going to keep going over some things, but if anybody does want to join, feel free. I think, we've alluded to this a lot, this next point I'm going to make, but it's so basic that we might as well mention it, at least in passing. A lot of our depression is simply because we've lost community. Janine has talked about this. I've talked about it. A lot of you talk about it in your interviews. JW's talk about it, left and right. You lost your family. You lost your church family, and their love felt so unconditional, and you find out it's deeply conditional, and that it shakes you to your core. Your community was sort of like, it was like friends that you were renting this whole time. You were renting your friends, and they had this whole agreement, the conditions of like, if you do it the right way, then you can keep renting us as your friends. But it's been ceremonial. It's been a script. It's been fake. You didn't just lose like a church. You lost your family. You lost your neighborhood. You lost your zip code. It's been conditional love, and these people don't care. And a lot of them are going to not just not care in a passive sense. Some of them are going to actively go after you. They're going to attack you, and that's depressing too. Going back more to the internal stuff, I think a lot of us feel like our identities are collapsing when we leave this. There's just a strange feeling. There's a strange sorrow, you might say, that you are meeting yourself for the first time, and you realize that the you that's been sort of in this Christian world this whole time is basically been a fake you. It's been a mask. It's been a facade. It's been a managed, choreographed you. And so now that, and you choreographed it pretty well, you probably looked pretty good and shined up really well. But now that that's gone, you're like, where's my identity? Who am I without Christ? And I remember hearing of people say this, you may have too, where they said, when they were Christians, they would say, if Jesus isn't real, I don't know that I'd want to live. I don't know I'd want to live in a world without a God, and especially without the God of the Bible. I wouldn't want that world. That would be the most hideous, ugly world to live in. And they're probably in many ways betraying the fact that what they're saying is, I wouldn't want to live in that world because I have no idea who I'd be without that. I've got this whole choreographed life, this mask, and you're basically, when you deconstruct and deconvert, you are introducing yourself to yourself for the first time. And that's weird. It's weird and it's painful. And if you feel angry, you're like, I would have liked to have met you a long time ago. I should have arguably met you a long time ago. But, it's water under the bridge in some ways. Let's make the most of it from this point on. But I wish I knew myself all these years. I think a lot of us can possibly be depressed because of shame issues. We've talked about this a lot recently, so I don't want to belabor this point too much. But I think of trees, big trees in the middle of the afternoon when the sun's sort of going down. They have these long shadows. It's sort of like that. Christianity has a very long shadow, and you can move past the tree, but the shadow still gets you. You've totally moved on from the doctrines and the creeds, and you've even mentally assented. Yeah, I can see now what purity culture did. I've talked about it. I've seen lots of videos about it, and it makes sense. This really did mess with me. But shame is sticky. Shame is sticky. It gets into you, and it stains you. It's a staining thing. It's grape juice and red wine that's been sitting on a cotton cloth for years, and you've been spending your years blushing at yourself, blushing at your desires, embarrassed at your desires. And sometimes I think some people are depressed because that stuff is still hanging on, and they just don't know how to deal with it. Like, why should I be ashamed of my desires? But they are. I think a lot of us can be depressed because Christianity does a pretty poor job of teaching us what you might call emotional literacy. We're focused on chapter and verse. We're focused on expository preaching. We're not focused on understanding the inner psychological patterns of your private life. We're just not. I'm sure there's some churches that do a better job than others, maybe at touching on it a little bit. But by and large, it's about chapter and verse. And it's about repentance, confession, and the gospel. You're not trying to understand yourself. And psychology for a lot of us was seen as a secular topic. Psychology was not seen as something that is crucial to your healing. It was seen as, this is part of the devil's work. You got evolution and science, you got psychology and counseling. It's all variations on the theme of trying to come up with wisdom that's human when you should just listen to God's wisdom. And so, when your depression comes in, you have no real language for what's actually happening. You are not emotionally literate. And, everything is so far felt like an emergency in your Christian life. And now this kind of feels like an emergency. and you have no framework for how to evaluate it. And some of us, we knew Paul backwards and forwards. We knew Jesus backwards and forwards. We knew Peter. We knew all those stories. We knew so much of the Old Testament. We knew James backwards and forwards. We knew Revelation backwards and forwards, all that stuff. And we never learned to know ourselves backwards and forwards. We knew more about the Apostle Paul, at least we thought we did. We knew more about the Apostle Paul than about ourselves for 40 years. And we were okay with it. We were okay with saying, I'm really concerned to know what the Apostle Paul thought. And we never bothered to say, Tim, what do you think? Or insert your name. You, what do you think? It's crazy. It's crazy. We denied ourselves so bad for so long, to our own demise. A lot of us, of course, are depressed because Christianity is an addiction. The opiate concept. And I recently was told that the opiate of the masses quote is taken out of context, and I heard the longer explanation. And there is more to it. But I'm going to just stick with the general concept of how we understand it. The opiate of the masses, it is an addiction, and you feel so much certainty and so much joy in just knowing that you're in the club, you're in the right worldview, you're with the right God, and everyone else is wrong. But that can be intoxicating. You're basically drunk on God. You're drunk on certainty. You've closed all the loops. You've got all the ambiguity wrapped up. You've explained everything. It's a nice, tidy package. It's all black and white. There's no gray area. And you've got all these psychological sedatives from Christianity just pumping you to the high heavens, and you know that you're on the right side of time and eternity. And then you go through detox. If certainty is your addiction and your drug, then deconstruction is your detox. And that's depressing. You should feel a little bit sad when you go from total certainty to total ambiguity. You should feel weird and upside down and a little dizzy and a little depressed. And I hope it doesn't last long. Hope you can come to, get back on your feet soon, but you shouldn't be embarrassed about that. When you lose such an addiction, there's a process to get through it. I'm going to bring on, looks like Janine just joined the studio. So she has a sec to join, and then we'll, anyone else that wants to join, please feel free. If you're waiting, I'll just bring you in, not like 3 at a time or any 2 at a time, but after Janine and I are done chatting. So feel free to join if you want to. Hey, Janine, great to see you again.
Hey, I had one sec. It might be loud. Can you hear me?
No, you're good. I can hear you and you're good. I can adjust your volume on this side anyway, so go ahead and talk. I'll adjust if I need to.
I had to jump in when you were talking about that because I recently reread the beginning of 1 Corinthians, and because I found a note in one of my old books that just said it. So I looked it up, and just the perspective when you look back at it, the tone that he has in it changes. And I realize now that he was speaking to a group that feels powerless. And that's kind of why he had the pull. If you go back and read it, you'll see what I mean. And I used to, there's a B right here. I used to have suicidal thoughts, and I have a really hard time with it. And I used to believe that my life would be meaningless without Christ. That's why I really wanted to join. I just went to a funeral over the weekend where they brought that up, where they brought up Paul saying that, if it's not true, then everything is meaningless. And I sat there respectfully. Of course, it's what the deceased would have wanted, the message and everything. Was his life's passion, was the Bible, so whatever. But it's devastating that they would think that if Christ didn't die for you, that it's all meaningless. I think that it's easy to get tunnel vision and see that is, and believe that within the context of the Bible, but there are so many other ways that you could think. Just because that's not true, it absolutely does not mean life is meaningless if it's not true. there's a lot of religions, of course. There's a lot of different worldviews, but absolutely there are other things to live for. Your life is not meaningless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've used the illustration too that if you didn't ever connect the intense meaning that Christianity claims to have to your life, if you just never got exposed to it, you would still have created meaning and been quite fine. And the illustration is if a bum happens to find a box of checks, like checks that he could write on, and he comes up to you and he somehow appears to be a businessman and he says, "Hey, I'm going to write you a check for $1 billion. You can't cash it for 5 years, but in 5 years, cash it. Promise you the money's there. Go do it. In the meantime, dream big. I just want to bless your life, but cash it in 5 years and have a great life once you do." And in 5 years, you go to the bank, and for 5 years, you've just been saying, "I can't wait till I can cash this sucker. I'm going to live high. I'm going to just bless my family and live all these dreams." And you finally go to the bank and you cash it, and they say, "Oh, sir, I'm sorry. This guy's been doing this for years. He writes checks all over town. He's a bum. These checks aren't worth the paper they're printed on." And like there's no money. This isn't real. And you're like, "Shit, like I had all these plans. Like what?" And you're now depressed because in your mind you had $1 billion and now you don't. And it's in the parallel sense in Christianity, you had all this meaning and now you don't. But if you had never had these fake promises, you would have still come up with your own meaning. You would have gone about your life and had a great life and been fine. They stole that innocence of your ability to just live a normal human life and make normal human beauty and creativity and purpose. But because they attached it to this bad check, when the bad check becomes exposed as fraud, you're like, "There's nothing left in life. Life is just meaningless." Like, no, you got duped. You're the sucker in the room, and we're all the suckers in the room. Oh, Janine dropped there. We'll see if she jumps back in here. But I didn't kick her out, I promise. Janine's welcome here in this channel, but may have been a Wi-Fi issue or something. But when you realize that this stuff is just, it's all fake, you shouldn't be thinking to yourself like, "Wow, I've got no meaning now that." I mean, how many of us would say, if Thor isn't real, then my life is meaningless. If Iron Man isn't real, then my life has no purpose left. Of course not. And even like the mythology that it was based on, if you were to say, if Dionysius isn't real, then I have no life left. Of course not. That's insane. None of us would give that a thought. We would laugh at it. But we got Janine back. All right. You're on mute. Can you do you have an unmute button? Oh, we lost her again. All right, third time's the charm. Hat trick. We'll see if she jumps back in here. But anyway, I hope that makes sense. And real quick comment here. See if there's any others I missed. Panda says, "That's one of the hardest parts, Tim, seeing how fast I was dropped by my best friends." Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. All right, I see Janine back. We'll do it. Are we back? Oh, we're frozen. We'll try a third time. I see another one. Okay.
Am I ready?
I can see you. I can hear you. We are good now. Fingers crossed. I think that was the devils. The devils were trying to get in our conversation. So
Yeah.
So feel free to comment.
The whole time. Sorry.
You could hear me the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, feel free to comment if you want to, or if you wanted to add some other separate thoughts, feel free.
I just jumped in there because of the meaninglessness and the theme of depression. I couldn't help myself. It was loud, so I couldn't really hear. Is there an echo?
A little bit.
Okay.
No worries. You're good. Was there anything else in your heart? I know you just had a minute tonight, but was there anything else in your heart to share with this?
No, that was it. I just, my heart goes out to everyone who's inside of the deconstruction process still and is struggling with that issue, that they might think that it's meaningless outside of it, but there is so much more. There's so much more that you can't even imagine until you get out of it. And that's all.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and life, it really is one of those things where it feels so upside down at first, but you do eventually get your footing. I mean, how many of us have been through romantic breakups or something? You just like, where it was really serious, and you had all of your expectations this was going to work out, and then it doesn't. Of course, you're going to spend a few days, weeks, even months thinking, I just don't know what happened, and this is sad. And then eventually you don't even think about it anymore, and eventually you almost forget it ever happened. It's just so far in the past. It's just like it's a non-issue. There are times that when I hear Christian doctrines, it's hard for me to imagine that I ever believed that stuff like that. I cannot believe I used to believe that stuff. It pisses you off, but it's also like almost unbelievable because it's just been so long. And for me, it's not been that long. It's been 6 years, but because I do this, it feels like it's more time is passing because I'm focused on it so much. But it's like, wow, like that stuff was my life. Yeah, it was. But it helps you to acknowledge, like, it feels weird to think I ever believed that because you're moving further and further and further away from your old life. And that includes moving away from the depression and the anxiety and the confusion. You eventually are like, my life is just fine. I'll make it. I'll take it one day at a time like everyone else, but I'll be fine. It's just, I think it's these harder parts where we need to wrap our arms around everybody in the community and say, we know what it was like, and now that we're years past it, it doesn't hurt that much. We're like, it hurts, but we know how to get through it. We've grounded ourselves. We're used to this. But you have to put your mindset back and say, there's somebody that's checking out channels like this one and the others in our community, and it's like this is their first week out, or this is their first secret stealthy, that like they would never watch a channel like this in their lives, and they're sneaking it in hoping no one's noticing their YouTube history. Like, I went to an atheist channel and they're just starting and their life is about to get freakishly weird and difficult. And that's where we can come in and help them and say, been there, done that. It's okay, but we'll help you through it, and we'll cry with you.
Absolutely. That was me.
Well, I know you said you've only got a minute, so I won't keep you, but thank you so much, Janine. Please come back whenever you're ready. We love having you on. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Tim. You guys aren't alone.
Yep. Have a great night.
You too.
All right. Thank you again, Janine, so much. And real quick, Professor says, are you familiar with the Liminal Living channel? It's a good halfway point for people leaving evangelical Christianity. That rings a bell. I probably have seen it. I'm guessing that's why it rings a bell. I don't think I've spent much time on it, but I may have heard of it before. But I'll check that out later. Sure, Yahweh and Thor are not real, but at least Luke Skywalker can be real, right? Hey, it's as real as your mind makes it real. Oh, no worries. Just appreciate you jumping in, Janine. So good to see you. And just to go through a few more points here. And again, if anybody wants to join, I'll put the link in. I'll put it to the bottom so you don't have to scroll for it. But I think a lot of us are also dealing with depression because, like I said before, it's anger. This is anger that's turned inward. Your anger did not really have a voice for so long in Christianity. And for all we know, you have a proverbial cathedral of rage inside you at this point. You have gone through so much anger that it fermented and changed, and it took on the forms of numbness or despair or you rejecting yourself. But it's all about rage. It's all about anger. They stole your years, the years of your life. They probably stole your childhood. They stole your sexuality. They stole who you really were. They made you really small in a universe where you should just be overwhelmed and dancing for joy, and they made you feel like a little puppet who needs to just sit down and listen to the elders. And in fact, the elders needed to sit down and listen to you. Your depression is going to come out when you're finally allowed to tell the truth and let your anger show. There's heaviness. There's a lot of heaviness there. So I think a lot of us too can feel depressed because we just, in a similar note, feel like we're behind in life. We lost so much time, the crushing grief of this time that we spent in Christianity. We spent all of our time policing our bodies and waiting on God and suppressing stuff and shrinking and building our lives around this mythology that's not true and it's irrelevant. and you take sort of this inventory of your life that feels very bitter, not bittersweet, but just bitter. Like, I delayed relationships because of this stuff, or I rejected relationships. My development as a human was completely stopped and stalled. There were risks I could have taken that I avoided, but maybe I would have rather taken them. My identity was certainly dismantled or postponed. And these vanished years, you can't get back. You can't wave a magic wand and go backwards in time. You just feel like you're saying, I should have been so much different or so much further by now. And that's depressing. That's depressing. You've lost years of your life to an ancient Canaanite demigod, written about by dead men whose voices died in the desert long ago. This story was starving you. This story was depriving you. This story was rewriting you. This story was stealing your identity. This story was making sure that you stayed quiet when you wanted to speak up. And now you're like, it's time. But man, I wish I'd started so much longer, so much earlier, so much long ago. And I sometimes think about that. I try not to think about it too much, but I think, what would it have been like if I had deconstructed in my late teen years, my early 20s? I mean, all the choices would have been different. And you got to, in some ways, just count the losses as somewhat of a gain, because you think, well, I lost to marriage, but I gained 4 beautiful children. So, it breaks your heart, but you can count your blessings at the same time, as we say. But I think you still feel like it's a shame. I lost so much. There was so much there. And Cold Iron Gaming says, I'm not on my computer with a streaming setup today. Maybe next time. Sure, no worries. I'm depressed for the life I could have had. Yes, that's a good way to put it. You could have had a different life, and arguably a much better life. I think a lot of us are depressed because of physical issues. We've talked about this a lot before, so I'm not going to belabor the point. But when you live in this stress of the emergency mode of the hypervigilance we talked about last night, your body has been going through fight, flight, freeze, or fawn for so long. You've been tense. You've disassociated. Your body's is just, it's tired. It's tired, and there's so many things that your body's kind of associated with the shame. You may have had a conversation about a topic that hurt, that made you thought, man, I shouldn't have talked about sex, and there you are. You're ashamed of yourself. You have a conversation about hell, and it hurts that maybe you didn't share the gospel enough. And there's certain tones, you hear your pastor's voice with this deep authority. There's all these things that trigger you, and your body tenses up, and your body's got a lot of luggage, a lot of baggage. Your body doesn't really think it's safe. At least it hasn't up till this point. And it hasn't been safe. And now for the first time, it's sort of figuring out how to be safe. But the fact that it's also acknowledging, I thought in my beliefs that I was safe, but now in my worldview, I see it was not safe this whole time. That's depressing. Your body remembers. Your body remembers. It has a grief that you have to go through. I think a lot of us are depressed sometimes because we're missing more the routine and the structure. We're used to the rhythm of, okay, you go to church on Sundays, you go to church maybe on Sunday nights, maybe you go to Wednesday night prayer meeting or something like that. You certainly have prayer groups or something. You have a rhythm, a shape. You have a script, you have your songs, you have your identity. Things just keep on getting reinforced. There's always somewhere to go. There's always something to perform. There's always something to say, especially if you're in a church where they do the creeds and the reading things. You just know when to stand up, you know when to sit down. I went to a church for a while. I was a Presbyterian church where literally like everybody in the church knew exactly when to stand up and sit down, and it was several times throughout the service, and it was written in the bulletin, but none of us needed to know. We just knew. You would stand up right at the beginning of the first hymn. The pastor did not need to say everyone rise, whatever. You knew when the first hymn came on, everyone stood up. It was just the way that church did it. And as soon as the creed, you'd say the Apostles' Creed, The minute the Apostles' Creed is done, you sit down. You have all these little routines that your church did. And, that structure is thick, and it's taken over your mind and your life and your schedule, your rituals. And when it's gone, you're like you're a little too free, you're untethered. You feel strangely like you're in space and you're kind of weightless. And you're like, I don't know how to do this. I need the gravity that I'm used to. The old rituals kept me grounded. And, you're starting new habits and new structures and new rituals, in a sense, that are going to be better for you. They're going to nourish you. But you don't as much miss Christianity. You miss the scaffolding of Christianity. You're done with it all, but you miss having something that's like the familiar scaffolding of your life and your friends and your schedule. If you were, imagine this as a picture. If you're lost in the wilderness and someone hands you a map, at first you think, this is great, I've got a map to get out of this wilderness. But you slowly realize that this map is incorrect, or it's the wrong location, or it's just made up, or something. It's a false map. It's weird, but it can feel better to hold on to that than to just throw it away. It feels better to have something, even if you know it's wrong, rather than discard it and say, this map doesn't help. This map is not of this location, or it's backwards or upside down or something. It feels better to hold the paper. You have to have something in your hands. And I remember hearing about people who are, is it OCD or something, where they have to have something. So before it was a cigarette, now they have to have a pencil in their hands or a lifesaver. They have to have something in their mouth. It's like you have to have something. It doesn't matter what it is. Cigarettes, yes, we can acknowledge it's bad, so let's move on. I need something still. Give me that little mint. Christianity is like that mint. You have to have something to hold on to. I think a lot of us get depressed because we realize that this healing that we're talking about, and we're going to be talking about it on this channel a lot in the next few months, but we can sometimes sort of beat ourselves up because it feels so slow. You thought you would leave Christianity, or that once you realize you're leaving it, you thought, okay, this departure is just pure joy. I have just escaped a prison for my mind. I'm so happy to know that it's never been real, and I can finally stop trying to make this fit. It's never going to fit. It's not. The cognitive dissonance has been overwhelming, and I can finally admit it all. You can see the lie, and you just sort of expect the ache of saying of that lie to just vanish because you've said it's a lie. Okay, so you're good now. Like, no, it's a lie. It's mythology, but I'm not good. I'm not good at all. And we need to acknowledge we are going to heal at different speeds. You might heal a lot faster than I do. And also, I think in that sense, you need to acknowledge that sometimes what you think is healing is not. It's a form of survival mechanisms, and you may be postponing your healing. You may be healing at different speeds, but you also may be thinking you're healed and you're not. I'm not saying you need to second guess yourself all day, but it's just a reality that healing can come and go in seasons as well. You might do some healing and then realize there's more, and you heal from that and you realize later there's more. I have no doubt, based on some of the awful things that I have been through in the last 2 or 3 years, not related to deconversion, just personal stuff. I have been through hell and back, and there will be days that I feel just fine from in a sense that it's okay now. But there will be days that what's just happened in my personal life in the last 2 or 3 years, there will be days that it just suddenly reaches in and just blows me away. And I have that with my kids. My daughter, Abby, she's 9. And tonight we do a family time where we talk about our day. You talk about your day, how you doing, what's on your mind, what's in your heart, what do you want to share? And we share different things. And then we say goodnight. And I'm turning off the lights, and they use those couple sound machines and fans as I do for the white noise in the air. I'm turning the lights off, turning the fans on, and I go to give her a hug. good night. And she's sobbing. And my initial response is like, what happened? Did you hurt yourself? Are you okay? What I didn't see what happened. And she keeps sobbing. This was just, an hour before we started, but she's sobbing away. What is it? What happened? She says, I'm just sad. I'm just sad that our family's broken. I wish the divorce hadn't happened. The kids have that. I have that. You keep coming back to the grief. And then other days you don't think about it too much. It doesn't hurt so much. But then other days it just absolutely is like a tsunami. I encourage you to let it be disappointingly slow when it is. Don't try to rush it. You're learning how to walk again. You've been in a wheelchair this whole time. You're learning how to walk again. Give yourself that freedom. It's not going to change overnight. Your muscles need to grow strong. Anyway, you will heal, and you will keep healing. I think it's important to say a few final things on this. Our depression over our deconversion, you need to tell yourself that does not mitigate the courage it took for you to do what you did. It took overwhelming courage to escape. Don't let the depression make you think I made the wrong choice. If leaving this thing was so wonderful and was such a freeing thing, then why do I feel so shattered and broken? Leaving and feeling depressed and suffering after you've escaped, it does not mean that the prison was home. The prison was still a prison. It was not your home. It just means the damage was real and deep. And it's going to take a minute. Your pain when you leave is evidence that you are human and that you carried the weight of the world on your shoulders. It's not evidence that you should go back. It's not evidence that you made a wrong choice. It's evidence that you have had the weight of the world on your shoulders for far too long, probably from childhood. Falling apart can be a very honest posture. You've been forced for years to have a fake posture, right? Compose yourself and give yourself a facade, a mask, a Christian mask. You're now being very honest with yourself. That's admirable. Falling apart is part of being brutally honest with yourself. Your hope for a better life, for healing, for reclaiming your identity, it is going to come in slowly, quietly, and in stages. We're used to these crescendos of songs and hymns or sermons, 3 points in a poem and bam, and you feel so inspired, and life is just, you've reset yourself for the week with Christ. And there's no crescendo of deconstruction. It's just going to be small little steps, very gentle. You rethink something, you set a boundary, you cry a little bit, you trust yourself a little bit more than you did the day before. You think through issues of beauty and purpose. You're like a flower that is very slowly opening. Some of those bulbs, I can't think of the name of one of them. If some of the bulbs, I think they don't bloom even every year. Some of them take a couple of years before they bloom. And you've been sitting through season after season after season, and the bulb of your life is starting to bud, and the greenery is starting to come out, and eventually it's going to be a flower. And it's been so long. It's a quiet process. It's okay. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to let the healing go slow. Don't try to mimic anybody else, and don't set yourself some arbitrary time frame. Oh, I should be over the pain of deconstruction within 6 months. No, don't do that to yourself. Give yourself plenty of space, a wide berth, and prepare for the feeling of I'm doing okay, and then you're not again. And then I'm doing okay. No, I'm not. I just want to say a few final things if I could, and let's see here. Janine says, the friend thing is so real. Yeah, for sure. Responding to Panda and collective effervescence. Yeah. A few final thoughts. We're about an hour and 34 minutes here. If anyone wants to jump in for just a minute, that's fine, but we'll wrap up in about maybe 5 more minutes or 10 minutes max for if it's just me. I wanted to say that a lot of us have been afraid. We've lived in fear. We talked about that a little bit with hypervigilance, but we've just been afraid of so much. We've been afraid of so much, and that fear has been also a fear of ourselves, a fear of, you're told you're a sinner that's going to mess up your life if you don't avoid temptation and yada, yada. We've been afraid of so much, of angels, of demons, of end times, the rapture, of our sin, of our temptation, so ashamed, so fearful. And in reality, all the energy and all the time that we spent doing all those things, we should have just been learning who we are, getting to know ourselves. And Christianity has deprived us of the time, but it's also deprived us of the language, the verbiage. Some of you write me and say, hey, you use this phrase and that's captured it. And, or I'll quote somebody like, man, that quote from so-and-so just captured it. That person is so eloquent. And Tim, glad you brought that up, because that gave me the words to say it. And, maybe you go watch their channel or read their book or something, because they're putting words out there that give you the sense of how to express this. A lot of us have not had a way of really coming to grips with what's happened, learning who we are, and having the language to describe what's happened to us and where we go from here. And I want to so invite you to please fully grieve what has hurt you. Fully grieve what has hurt you. Do not rush it. Do not think you're taking too much time. Do not feel embarrassed about being depressed. There are days for all of us. I think we need to say with clarity and tenderness, our pain makes a lot of sense. Christians can gaslight us all they want. If you'd stayed, you wouldn't have been depressed, or this is your own fault. Your pain makes sense. It makes sense that you're fucking exhausted. I am too. It makes sense that you're disoriented. It makes sense that you feel psychologically dizzy. It makes sense that you have so many mixed emotions, the grief and the freedom, the joy, the sadness. It's like you're going through seasons, almost like compressed seasons. You're going through spring, summer, spring, winter, fall, all these seasons back and forth. I said I'm out of order, didn't I? Spring, summer, fall, winter. You're going through all these seasons back and forth. And you're collapsing under the sheer weight of all the changes that have occurred. And a lot of the wounds that you have been sort of invisible, and now you're bringing them into the light, and now you can see it, and you're like, oh my gosh, if I'd known that, I would have put a Band-Aid and medicine on that. I would have gone to the doctor and had it stitched up. But you're now seeing the wounds for the first time. And with that process, there are going to be days where you're just going to collapse. You're just going to collapse. That happens when you take off the mask. That happens when you stop pretending. There are sorrows that are bubbling up underneath in your psyche, and they're waiting to get to the surface. And you are taking steps tonight or this week or this month, this year, to allow those things to bubble up to the surface. And when those sorrows hit the surface, it will shake you to your core some days. That's a good thing. You're healing. The tears are not all bad. Some of them might put you through the ringer, but they're not all bad. If any of this is where you are tonight, please remember, you're not failing. Again, you are not wrong to leave. The Christians and their gaslighting is not right. Don't listen to them. Do not listen to the naysayers. It's been garbage, and it's going to keep being garbage. They don't get it. They do not get it. You weren't weak in any way for leaving. And this is not doomed to be this way forever. You're not doomed to be a depressed atheist till the day you die. That's not how this works. You're a human who survived something that dove and reached down into your identity for years and messed with you and your nervous system and your sense of worth and your imagination, your thought life, your body, and all the above, your relationships. And you are now reclaiming your autonomy over yourself. So, wherever you are in this journey, whether you've been in this for a while, like I would say, I guess I am at, or if you feel very fresh and freshly shattered. Maybe you're more of a quietly numb kind of person. You're not that you don't feel that angry. You're just kind of numb. Just feels like you took some painkillers for your, in a sense, spiritually, for your aches of this deconversion, and you're deeply grieving. Maybe some of you are further along and you're feeling like, I'm starting to feel some relief. I feel better. I feel okay. Wherever these kind of live stream messages find you, I do hope that we can help remind each other that we're not alone. We're not alone in this. Other people have walked through these dark times. And a lot of them, I think, would confess gladly. Eventually you feel the life return. And just like any other incredible loss of a parent, loss of a love, loss of something else meaningful to you, eventually the grieving process takes its course and the laughter returns, your curiosity comes back, your delight in and hunger for beauty and joy, and eventually you just want to dance again. I remember, I'm going to tell a quick story. I remember when I was here in Georgia, I had moved from Pennsylvania for a very special doctor to cure my insomnia, and I've told that story many times. But as I got settled here in Georgia, and I really liked it, I eventually got on eHarmony, and I got connected with a girl down in Tampa, or Lakeland, and she and I began a dating relationship that ended with, or moved eventually to being engaged. And I guess, just to summarize, it was so good. I mean, every day with her got better than the last. It just got so good. And we eventually went through like premarital counseling. And she told the counselor, I've never been treated better in my life. He treats me so good. And I, music to my ears. I'm like, I'm so glad that she feels that way. And we get to the point where we are 1 month away from the wedding down there in Tampa. And we have this one final time where she's up here in Georgia. She flies back or drives back to Florida, and we've got 1 month to the wedding. It's just, everything is glorious upon glorious. I go to work the next day and I come home to an email that says, and I'm keep in mind, I'm on cloud nine. I'm on absolute cloud nine. She is just at that point the love of my life. And the Lord has, I was a Christian at that time, the Lord has restored the years the locusts have eaten through this relationship. It is so beautiful. And I come home to an email that says, I am ending everything immediately. Do not bother calling me or my family. We will not explain it. And through the grapevine, I found out, a month later, when she was supposed to marry me, she married someone else, implying she was probably double dating the whole time. And that's why long distance relationships can sometimes really suck, because you can't see that they're cheating. But I bring that up not to ask for your sympathy, but to say, what do you do when that happens? At that point, you have a couple options. One of them is you can sit there depressed, say, this sucks. Someone else married her, and I've lost so much time and so much energy, and she was everything, and I can't believe it. I can't believe this happened. And you could just sit there and just be so upset at this situation. Or you can say, I can say to myself, there's a person in Tampa who at this point is fully married to someone else, does not give a rat's ass if I live or die or how I'm doing. And you are wasting more and more and more of your time letting someone who will never be anything to you, you can waste your time just, woe is me, lick your wounds. You've gotten to the bottom of the barrel, and now you're going to lick the splinters at the bottom on purpose. You can do that if you really want to. Or you can say, you know what? I'm going to cry for an appropriate amount of time, but it happened. It's over. And what if the true love of my life, that I haven't met yet, maybe she's out there, and maybe if I spend the rest of my days licking my wounds and being miserable and being depressed, I won't be ready for that relationship when I find it. But maybe, just maybe, if I find a way to heal, I can get back to real life, and maybe somehow it will get beautiful again. You have to at some point say to yourself, there's an appropriate depression time, but there's also a sense of I have to dream and hope. And someday I will, when the right time comes, I will move on from the grieving enough to say, I want my life back. I want my fucking life back. You stole it from me. You stole my time. You stole my attention. You stole my energy. It's time. I want my life back. And I'm done letting, you've already stolen so much. The line is in the sand. You will steal no more. And of course, at that point, you're not talking to the person, you're talking to yourself in a sense, but you're saying to them effectively, I will let you steal no more time from my life. You've stolen so much. And you have to essentially say, Yahweh and Jesus, fuck you. You stole so much from my life. I am done. You've now that I'm here, I've been so depressed about this restart and all that I've lost. And you do need to grieve it. You need to cry and cry and cry as much as you need to. But at the same time, eventually you'll get to a point where you have to say, they've stolen so much. How much more? How much more will you let them steal before you say, enough? I'm done letting you steal my life. I will dance. I will dance the rest of my days. I can sit there and stare at the wall. I can sit there and cry. Or I can figure out how to dance again. And it's going to be, again, some days are good, some days are bad. But your life is waiting for you on the other side of your grief. Grieve as deeply as you need to. And don't let anybody make that a quicker process than it should be. But don't give up hope. You will dance again. And there will be a day where you'll say, fuck it all, I'm done. I'm back on my feet. I'm back. And I applaud those of you who are going through that. It's a hard process. It really is. I hope the masks can come off for people like us. I hope that in a studio room, so to speak, the digital room like this, I hope we can say the aftermath of deconstruction is very hard, but we can also say this is not the end of the story. We're going to be hopeful, and we're going to build each other up, and we are going to be people who look for the weak among us and say, I can see the new people coming in the door. And you know what? I'll bet you're struggling like crazy. I'll bet you don't know that this gets better. I'll bet you think your life is over because you just escaped Christianity. I'll bet you think it's meaningless. And I'll bet some Christians are being nasty as hell to you over your leaving. Let's be the helpers. Let's find those weak among us. Let's find the people who are in tears far, far more intense than ours. And maybe even in healing, helping them heal, we'll also find some healing too. I'm going to read a few quick comments and then wrap up. Sunny deification. So do we still believe in God? I don't. But your deconstruction is your deconstruction. And I certainly wish you the best in wherever you land. If you land in agnosticism or you land in some spirituality, you're not wrong. There is no right or wrong here. This is your journey. You have to do what's right for you. We're all on a train, and there's different stops. You pick the stop that sounds appropriate for you, and you can always get back on the train and go to the next stop. But as a kid, I suffered with religious trauma of burning in hell, anxieties, nightmares. I'll be 53 in May, and finished deconverting around 25. It has been liberating from my mind, so there is hope. Absolutely. Well said. Also 53, they got me at age 16 and forced me to convert using violence. I'm so sorry. That's awful. I thought they were going to kill me. Heavy stuff. Very heavy stuff. Well, I love you all. Thank you so much for letting me be part of your lives. Thanks for being part of mine. Thanks for those of you that came on. And I'll be continuing to do these live streams. I do just want to mention that tomorrow's topic is, I think, pretty interesting. But I also think that it might hurt to talk about it, but we need to hurt to heal. And this is assuming there's no changes in my schedule, and at this point, I don't think there will be. I'm going to do it earlier, fingers crossed. There's the animism again. I'm going to aim for 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night, and it is the topic of how the responsibility to always please your Father hurt you. And there's sort of a double meaning there, your earthly father and your heavenly Father. how your need to make your father happy at all times hurt you. Think about it. If you've got something to say about that, please jump in tomorrow night when we most likely do that topic. I hope that helps in so many ways. I hope you know that you helped me, and I love you all so much. Last few, Shell says, just caught the tail end of that. Very powerful thought to not let it control you. Hold your thoughts anymore. Yeah. And I'm not sure what that stands for, but same to you. Anyway, thank you so much. Love you all. Have a great evening, a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks again.